The Bears traded for Montez Sweat, and we discuss, is it a trick or a treat on this Halloween? We talk about that next on the Unbearable Sports Podcast.
I'm going to take the North and never give it back.
So that's a good pick. You get the corner.
Man, I'm confident in our offense, that's for sure.
Yeah, she's got some nice
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barron. Make sure to like and subscribe out there on YouTube and rate the show 5 stars everywhere that you get your podcast, especially Apple Podcasts, because if you rate 5 stars, you'll be in the running for a Darnell Wright jersey. Maybe I should change it over to Montez Sweat. We'll see if he ends up getting his patented 90, if he can take that away from Dominique Robinson. But today, we are going to be breaking down the trade. We're going to be breaking down Chase Young. Should he have been a Chicago Bear? We're going to be talking about Jaylon Johnson, his contract of the future. Also, Darnell Mooney trade talks as well that supposedly were going on as well. So, like I said, make sure to like and subscribe. We'll cover all things Chicago Bears. And it pains me not to be live right now. I'll get random coughing fits. I'm still a little under the weather, but got to break down this because I don't know about you. I was pretty excited when I saw this just because the Bears are doing something, right? And that's where I'm curious for all those people out there on YouTube. Let me know down in the comments, how would you grade this? A, B, C, D, F? What's your thoughts on this? Because I think there's a lot of polarizing takes. I'm, for one, as a fan, I like it when you trade for a good player. And we saw the Bears trade for a second round pick over to Montez Sweat. And Montez Sweat, let's break down a little bit about him before we go too deep, right? So let's talk about Montez Sweat, 6'6", 262 out of Mississippi State. It's his 5th season, 27 years old, like just turned 27 in September. He has 32 tackles this year and 6.5 sacks and 17 run stops, charted by PFF. I believe that it was 7.5 run stuffs from ESPN stats. So the big difference, he's a run stuffer, right? That's the big piece that we know about him, but he's also an insane athlete. I know a lot of people that were talking about Chase Young were saying Chase Young's this great athlete. Sweat is as good of an athlete, if not better, due to injuries. But 9.9 RAS score, all around good edge rusher. And that was the big thing. I was going to kind of break down some of these edge rushers, but to me, Montez Sweat, watching the Commanders, Montez Sweat is a good player. Don't get it twisted. And he's done this consecutively. He's actually one of 7 players with at least 5 sacks in the last 5 years. The other people that qualify, Brian Burns, Chris Jones, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, Khalil Mack, and Max Crosby. So very, very good company for this edge rusher to be in. He's just consistent, and he does a lot of the stuff well, but really something that has been flying around Twitter, 90.5 run defense grade from PFF since 2020, which is the best among all edge rushers in the NFL. So to me, it kind of reminds me, okay, Khalil Mack was a superstar and Hall of Famer when we traded for him. But Montez Sweat is not at the same caliber of Khalil Mack, but he's in the same vein where he can do a lot on the run stuffing, and he can do a lot every single down. Now, I'm not calling him a superstar, not saying that he's too max level, but he's similar in the sense of the run defense kind of being the big focal point of his game right now. And even this year, 83.7 run defense grade and only a 67.2 pass rush grade. Now, does this mean that the guy can't rush the passer? No, we said it. He's had consistent production. He's never broken 10 sacks before. So I think overall, to me, when I think about Montez Sweat, he gives you good play. He gives you a good player that, are you going to build around? I'm not that high on him. And if someone is high on him all the way up to a superstar, someone you build around, let me know down in the comments, because I don't see that out of his game. But when I was watching him, down in, down out, he was always doing something. He was always contributing. And also, my favorite part is he just beats the guy in front of him. On the running downs, on the passing downs, he seems to be in control, which we have not seen out of our defensive ends them being in control. And like I said, 6'6", he's a big guy, long arms, and he's really just going to solidify that defensive end spot. And now my big question is, what else are you going to see out of these defensive ends? Now you have a player. And at the defensive interior, you started to get a little bit more production. Billings has looked good. Gervon Dexter's been on the uptick. And Justin Jones, surprisingly, has looked pretty good the past couple weeks in the NFL. So do we see some of the other defensive ends, Yannick Ngakoue, kind of take a little uptick? Walker, do we start to see them play a little bit better when you add another player? I'm also really excited to see what happens with these linebackers. We know we invested big at the linebacker position, and having somebody that can patrol the run a lot better like a Montez Sweat, now is this run defense going to be a lot more secured and be able to make a lot of these plays? Now, to me, we still need a good defensive coordinator. Come on, Flus. We can't just be letting people attack us up front, but I do like the addition. Now, the big question that's coming out is kind of this feeling of deja vu, because I'm a big analytics person. I like to see what the analytics community feels and just overall. And this kind of feels like deja vu with the Chase Claypool deal. And the reason why, if you look at it from an analytics perspective, now we're going to be a little nerdy right now, but the reason why the analytics community doesn't necessarily love the Montez Sweat trade is because when you trade for someone, you're giving away draft capital, which can be a cost-controlled player at, its second-round pick could be $1-2 million a year, and that player could be good and very cost-controlled. And then you trade for someone, so you give away assets, and then you have to sign them to a bigger deal. Now, where I feel like this isn't deja vu is you need to sign this player. You need to sign Sweat. And I know that I have the contract discussion later on, and the big reason why you sign him and not immediately sign Chase Claypool, you know who Montez Sweat is. And I think the biggest difference between Montez Sweat and Chase Claypool when we're talking about this is when we got Chase Claypool, we were saying he should, he could, maybe he can be this, maybe he can be that. Well, with Montez Sweat, you know who he is. You know what he does. If someone's out there saying, I think he's going to be a 16-sack guy, he's not going to be that. He's going to be a good player, down in, down out. Good/great type of a player. That's what he can do. And that's where I do like the addition, because you're adding a defensive end. And that's where I don't think this is as much of deja vu, because Chase Claypool was kind of on the downtick, not doing so hot with the Steelers, and the Bears were trying to time the market just right. And that's the other thing too. The big reason why the Bears wanted to trade for it is they don't think that some of the defensive ends are going to become available in the market. You saw Rashawn Gary go. Brian Burns is going to be a free agent, but I can't see Carolina not slapping the franchise tag on him. I don't think a lot of these defensive ends are even going to touch the market, except for maybe one. And that's going to be the one that kind of was the shot in the gut to a lot of Bears fans out there, was when Chase Young was traded over to the San Francisco 49ers for a compensatory third, which is basically a early fourth-round draft pick. That's the gut punch that the Bears felt right after everybody was kind of feeling super high that we just got a defensive end, and then this guy ends up going. I want to talk about this, and also, yet again, curious, down below, did you want Chase Young or did you want Montez Sweat? Because I'll tell you this, Montez Sweat is I've said this, a good player. Sometimes if you just add good players, your team's going to be better. And what they did was they added a good player, a reliable player. So to me, it's a safe pick what the Bears did. And that's why, to me, sign the guy. We'll go through the contract a little bit, next segment. But with Chase Young, there was a report done, I believe it was Greg Gabriel that I saw tweeted out there, that someone that he knows that's in the know was saying that the Chicago Bears did not really love the medicals that they got with the knees. I don't have the exact tweet up, but there's a lot of conversations going on that maybe the Commanders really didn't like Chase Young, but they wanted to keep Sweat, but they liked the second round pick, and it being the Bears, where it could be another top of the round second round pick. So that's that's the big thing with Chase Young. It was the injury question marks. And I will say, with watching him with Montez Sweat, I was doing my preparation even before this because I felt like something was going to happen. There were so many murmurs that the Bears were talking about Chase Young. Chase Young, to me, I watched every play that he did last season, and you saw him, he wasn't fully healthy because of that knee. And to the people say that he hasn't been healthy, it's really just been that one knee injury that was catastrophic that has kept him out all this time. And that big knee injury still seems to be the reason why a lot of teams didn't really want to touch him. So if all they could get is a super, super late round third, what does that mean for his market? Because could they, if it was just a third, I guarantee you there's a lot more people that would be going after him with that third. While the 49ers, they're going, okay, we'll bring you in for a super, super late round third, and we need some depth, and we're a really good team, so why not? And you get sacked so we can put you in specific situations. This year, it's still watching the tape, it seemed like he still wasn't trying to get off as much on that knee. Still seemed like it wasn't hampering him as much as last season, but still seems to be a problem. But something that I think we'll be on the lookout for is if he has a good season. So far, all the reports, people are already speculating, if he has a good season, they're going to let him walk in free agency, and the plan is to then get another compensatory pick for Chase Young if he ends up walking. So to me, the Bears can still walk away with both defensive ends if they really want to, if Chase Young ends up deciding to walk in free agency, which a lot of people think he might do if he's doing so well, because the 49ers can only sign so many superstars. I know people say the cap's a myth, but if they're able to land that, that's freaking impressive. I'll tell you that much right there. So let's actually talk about the contract a little bit, because to me, I like the player Sweat. I really haven't given a specific, like, what my grade is on this. My grade depends on what they give Montez Sweat for this contract. And to me, they need to give him this contract this week. I saw someone tweet out there saying, the Bears have all the leverage. No, they don't. They traded for him. And if he could still just be like, peace, I'm going to walk in free agency. You can tag me, but also you have Jaylen Johnson that you could also tag as well, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So to me, you need to sign Montez Sweat to a deal. Now, here's the big question mark. What is his worth? Because I saw out on Spot Rack, they were projecting him in the 25s, which to me is a little rich. If you look at the contracts that are out there, Nick Bosa, $34 million per year. TJ Watt, $28 million. Joey Bosa, $27. Myles Garrett, $25. Rashawn Gary, $24. Is he in that tier? To me, I don't believe so. Gary, Garrett, Bosa, those are that next level player that I think Sweat, yet again, good, great, but I wouldn't call him elite. I think that he's consistent. So to me, maybe Bradley Chubb had a $22 million. You know, can you lower that a little bit more? If it's under $20 million, I'd be super happy. But we'll have to see. Eric Armstead, $17 million. Alex Highsmith, $17. Shaq Barrett, $17. Danielle Hunter, $17. So to me, that 17 is where I'd be hoping for the Chicago Bears. But do I believe that they're going to get that? You know, Harold Landry, another person in a similar vein. Trey Hendrickson, is 21. Von Miller, 20, right? Where is he at in that scale? That's something that I hope. If the Bears traded for a player and did not have a deal in place or close to being in place, that to me is a big, big red flag in this organization if they don't have that. Sign them. You need to do that because you can't let another person walk, especially with someone like Montez Sweat, who has already shown what type of a player he is in this league. I don't think you need to see him in this system. I think you just give him his money, and hopefully you already talked about this. So this is not a surprise to you. You can talk to the agent before getting the player. So hopefully sometime this week, they're able to get him a new contract so that he can play and that we can kind of take a nice sigh of relief to say, okay, he's locked in for the future. I would hope for like a 3-4 year tops type of a deal. And like I said, it would be awesome if it's in the 17. If it's 17, I'm super happy. but unfortunately, I feel like it might be a little bit more than $20 million. We'll just have to see what happens with that deal. But speaking of deals, let's talk about Jaylen Johnson, because Jaylen Johnson was the other person that was making some pretty big headlines for the Chicago Bears. He had the permission to seek a trade. Now, there's a lot saying that the 49ers were super big on him. The Bills, the Steelers, all these teams really wanted Jaylen Johnson. But the rumor out there was that the Chicago Bears did have a high price tag on him. I believe I saw somewhere that someone heard like 2 day 2 picks was what the Bears were really looking for. 2 day 2 or maybe even like a day 1. So they had a high price tag on Jaylen Johnson and sought after him very highly, which is great to hear about a 24-year-old good lockdown corner. So pay the guy. So pay him. Now, I believe it was Josina Anderson from ESPN saying that she does not expect Jaylen Johnson to really continue on contract negotiations for the rest of the season. We'll see if there's any other details that we kind of pick up on that. But I think the big question is going to be, what is the future of Jaylen Johnson on this team? Because there's a lot of these talks. Ultimately, nothing happened. Bears had a high price tag. But now what? What is the Jaylen Johnson price tag? What should he go for? Yet again, going through the cornerbacks, Jair Alexander, $21 million. Denzel Ward, $20 million. Marshawn Lattimore, $19 million. Marlon Humphrey, $19 million. Trayvon Diggs, $19 million. That 19 is kind of those elite corners. Now, is he elite? He's been banged up throughout the year. To me, I look down and I think about a Carlton Davis. I think about Jamel Dean, Charvarius Ward, very good corners, similar to Jaylen Johnson, that might have had some injury history, and they are around. So Carlton Davis, 14.8, Darius Slay, Charvarius Ward, 14 million. To me, I think that's where he really is going to be, is if you can get him in that 15 or less. I think that is his tier in the market. And maybe I see a lot of people saying, you got to give him more, you got to give him more, you got to give him at least 18. 18 is Jalen Ramsey type of numbers. Is he that corner? That's where I think Ryan Poles is probably sticking up the line and saying, listen, no, I'm not going to pay you that. But to me, that's why it's also so important that they need to sign Montez Sweat right now to a deal, because you can then franchise Jaylen Johnson. You don't let him walk out the door. You do not let a good corner walk out the door, especially if he's 24 freaking years old. And also someone in the locker room that a lot of people are friends with. I know Cole Kmet, very, very good friends of him. Also, there's so many people that just respect him as a leader when you have young corners out there. I know Terrell Smith has been good, but Jaylen Johnson has been better. You need a veteran. You pay your guys. So hopefully there can be a deal done somewhere, and hopefully it's done in the near future. Now, one thing that I forgot to mention a little bit more about Jaylen Johnson, that I'll actually go back to the Jaylen talks on, is one rumor that some people were speculating was this can also be a tactic from the Bears to have him seek out a trade to kind of see the market for a Jaylen Johnson and what do people think about him. Now, in return, you were hoping that at the end of the day, it's all right, contract, the negotiations are back on the table. But the rumor that they're now off the table is what really kind of has me concerned about everything. But like I said, let me know what you think down below in the comments. How much do you think that Jaylen Johnson's worth? We just ran through some of the contracts. Where do you think he sits there? Now, the big question, what is next for our beloved Chicago Bears? We have the Saints coming up. I hope that Sweat can be out there. I hope Sweat can be playing for the Bears so we can see what this defensive front looks like. I believe he will. Defensive end, pretty easy to kind of get up and running. And the last bit that I do want to say, there was a rumor that there was teams trying to seek out for Darnell Mooney, but the price was too high, quote unquote, for Darnell Mooney. Now, how high is that? Maybe it was just a third-round pick. Maybe it was a fourth because of his level of production. We don't necessarily know too much. But like I said, let Let me know down in the comments what you thought of the trades. Do you think that the Bears won? Also, what would you give it? Make sure to like and subscribe out there on YouTube. My throat is starting to go. So with that, Unbearable Sports Podcast, we are out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair, and you know that she's a